Carolyn, thank you very much, Pedro, for this invitation. Can you hear me well?
Yes,
But
perfect.
you can all hear me well. Perfect. So it's a great honor to finally have fungi included in the discussion around neglect in trade. And it's always hard to invite people to open their minds enough to think about the fact that we're talking about a kingdom or queendom, depending on what you believe in. And we're talking about a kingdom of living organisms in the midst of a discussion about species. So as you'll see in the programs of most symposia or most publications talking about trade or even talking about conservation, you will have a species level separation, maybe a family level separation. Sometimes we'll get to phyla, and then maybe the same amount of time given to a rhinoceros is maybe given to talk about a whole group of organisms that are the fungi. So just invite you all to open up your understanding of kingdoms and phyla as we walk through this issue. So I am founder and director of the Fungi Foundation, first NGO on Earth dedicated to the kingdom of the fungi. We envision a healthy planet in which fungi are recognized and recyclers of nature. And to start this talk, I'd like to tell you a bit about what fungi are and what they are not. So fungi are not plants, so they do not fall under the category of flora. They are not animals, therefore they do not fall under the category of fauna. But they are a kingdom of eukaryotic organisms that include yeasts, molds, lichens, mushrooms, conchs, earth stars, and we can go on. Chytrids, there are flagellate fungi, there are unicellular fungi, multicellular fungi, so forth. So when we talk about, for example, the neglected, a neglected group in trade policy, and we say fungi, it's like saying plants or animals. If we were to talk about mammals, for example, as a neglected group, the equivalent in the fungal kingdom would be, for example, as you might all do in their paper published just recently, we would look at, for example, Basidiomycota or Ascomycota, different categorization of the living organisms inside the kingdom. So they are they're one of the most diverse groups of eukaryotes. They outnumber vascular plants by as much as 30 to 1. Nevertheless, we've only described between 1 and maybe 10% of them. In the literature, you will find some people talking about a mean of 5% of described number of taxa within the kingdom. Others will talk about 10%, but it's very hard to find anything that would be over 10% of total diversity described. Fungi are a very essential and fundamental group of organisms that form symbiosis with plants, animals, bacteria, and other living organisms. And they are responsible for the recycling of energy on the planet and for forming these symbiosis that enable life on Earth as we know it. No plant, virtually no plant can live outside of water without mycorrhizae, so the fungi that live in or on the roots, or even arbuscular mycorrhizae that live inside the plant cell throughout the whole tree, for example, or the whole plant. So in synthesis, plants are not able to synthesize nutrients from soil without the fungi who do that for them. Go there a bit further in this example, herbivores, for example, a cow or an elephant, these animals are not able to break down the cellular cell wall of the plants they eat, and they team up with fungi in their gut and in their stomach to do that for them. So do we. And therefore, fungi really are a kingdom of organisms that challenge the notion and the concept of a single species. So when I look at a tree, I don't see a species of plant. I see an interconnection and interdependency of plants with fungi, many times, and mostly with animals, and a large group of organisms that cross different kingdoms, giving, making life, and sometimes only one very outstanding macroscopic life form. But there are many other life forms enabling that. Many species of fungi are traded widely, and either during their harvest or during, let's say, their harvest in ecological terms and or in social terms, some of these species trade entail catastrophic environmental consequences and sometimes catastrophic social consequences. But we know very little about these, you know, in the mainstream conversation. We have moved forward in red listing species of fungi, not only the Basidiomycota, which is a group that includes mushrooms, for example, toadstools, jelly fungi, but also with groups like Ascomycota, a phyla that has, for example, the morels, some entomopathogenic fungi that are very highly traded and sought after, like the Ophiocordyceps. But as we see in this publication last year by Carol and her colleagues, there were at that point only 12 species of Basidiomycota that were known to be traded, but that had been red listed. There is a very high rate of assessment of fungi in the IUCN red list pipeline, and it's finally getting to span over all continents. However, there are some fundamental issues that we have when it comes to looking at what fungi, what impacts trade has on fungi and the environment they grow in. And here are some examples. So morels, for example, which are organisms from the genus Morchella, are traded widely around different countries in the world. For example, Chile exports to Europe, exports to Brazil, to North America. Europe exports to Asia. The US imports and exports to several countries. Here in Chile, which exports 99% of its harvest, which is equivalent to 11 tons a year, with data from 2 years ago from the foreign export agency here. The morels harvested here are normally harvested after the intentional burning of native forests. Now, our old growth forests in southern Patagonia are not ecosystems that are used to fire or that depend on fire, like, for example, forests in North America, where morels appear after rim fires or after the fires that are brought on by lightning and that are part of the ecosystem. Here in Chile, the old growth forest is deliberately burnt with the misinformation that the fire will trigger morel growth as it does in North America. We've been able to demonstrate in a study with Harvard University that the species found here in Patagonia which are 9, none of them are from even the clade of fire-triggered morels. But we still have this myth that they will grow after intentional forest fires. In the case of Tricoloma matsutake, a very, very sought after edible mushroom that, for example, in the United States is harvested many times by large groups of immigrants without any social protection, any physical protection during these operations, people walking for extremely, in extreme heat many times, or extreme cold, walking for many hours, hauling a lot of weight and receiving tuppence. In the case of Ophiocordyceps or Ophiocordyceps sinensis, which is many call the Himalayan Viagra, it's a species of fungus that grows on the moth on the larva of a moth in the plateaus in Tibet. It's probably the most expensive fungus in the world, the most sought after, maybe the most endangered. But here we really do show, we can see what fungi show. We are harvesting and trading a species of fungus that grows on the moth larvae and is consumed with the remains of the larva attached to the fungus. So here we have 2 species that are in serious trouble in conservation terms, and that are highly traded, but there's not much we can do, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Reishi is another example. Reishi or Lingzi is a Ganoderma lucidum. It's the fungus of immortality, and it's highly traded between countries. And in different parts of the world, the import and the trade has caused the invasion in habitats where this species doesn't occur, and sometimes even with economic detrimental effects. It's like, for example, like train lines rotting, for example, due to this fungus that was imported. Now, thank you. As Carol said, Chile is the first country in the world to include fungi in its environmental legislation, and this really has led us to move towards finding justice for this kingdom in different governance and public policy areas. We propose that flora and fauna, as I mentioned before, is insufficient and obsolete as a term to refer to macroscopic life on Earth, and the delimitation of the term funga is necessary and overdue. When we refer to macroscopic life on Earth, we must talk about the 3 macroscopic kingdoms: the flora, the fauna, and the funga. Also, we are moving forward with the recognition of the discipline of conservation mycology, and through work with different colleagues, and especially through the Kew, the Royal Botanic Garden Kew reports on the state of the world's fungi, we are able to really consolidate the information and prove that fungi really do sustain life on Earth as we know it. So, for example, around 90% of living plant species will have mycorrhizal fungi associated with the roots, let alone the other groups that are associated with each cell throughout the whole organism. But how do we move forward? Language creates reality. Currently, CITES excludes fungi. CITES stands for the Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species of Wild Flora and Fauna. Now, fungi are not fauna or flora. So what do we do? This is a screenshot from today, from the CITES page, showcasing World Wildlife Day. Out of all of those photographs, there's not one fungus. But every single one of those organisms depends on a fungus, on the kingdom of fungi. So urgent action is needed, and we have to start from changing our language. And I hope that every one of you listening to me today will start talking about plants, animals, and fungi, or flora, fauna, and fungi. And hopefully we can together move forward for the inclusion of kingdom fungi in governance systems, in policy, and especially in language to refer to macroscopic life on Earth. With this, I would like to give a very special thanks to Amy Hinsley, who connected me with Carol and Pedro, to Rodrigo Ollanedel Diaz, a Chilean at Oxford, working on illegal trade in fish, and Daniela Torres of the Fungi Foundation. Thank you very much.